In this video, I will show you how to safely use a Liqui Moly cooling system flush. I will tell you what can go wrong and what you should absolutely never do, under what circumstances it's worth performing this procedure, and most importantly, I'll tell you about one critical step that will ensure the flush doesn't destroy any of your cooling system gaskets. Now let's get to work. Time to get started. When is it worth performing such a flush? I decided to do it for two reasons. When I bought this car, I noticed that the radiator was completely clogged up, which meant the airflow wasn't right. This got me thinking that the situation inside the cooling hoses probably wouldn't be any better. And after inspecting it, it turned out that a lot of sludge had accumulated inside the system, which had likely never been cleaned out. Both of these things severely limited my engine's cooling efficiency, putting it at risk of overheating. And now I'll show you how to solve this problem. I start by draining about 200 milliliters of the old coolant to make some room in the expansion tank. Before you pour the product inside, you should know that the full procedure will take all day. The cleaning itself takes literally half an hour. But getting rid of the product from the system, which is absolutely necessary if we don't want to damage the engine, as I'll explain later in the video, takes the whole day. If you're ready, add the whole can of the product with the engine turned off, making sure not to exceed the max level on the expansion tank dipstick. The product we're adding is a very strong solvent, which is why you need to be highly precise in everything you see in this video. It's a good idea to wear gloves for everything, and, for your own safety, avoid breathing in the fumes from this solvent. After emptying the can, I get inside and start the engine. Once you do that, you'll notice that with the cap off, something starts happening in the small water loop. Foam and bubbles begin to appear. This is a sign that the product is starting to circulate in the system, and at this moment, we have our first very important and precise task. I screw the expansion tank cap back on, and while parked, without driving the car, we warm it up to its full operating temperature, in my case, until it reaches 88 degrees Celsius. The car needs time to pump the product through all the dirty, hidden corners of the radiator, and driving would cause the entire engine to warm up way too quickly. The product foams heavily and causes cavitational air bubbles to form, which means driving with this mixture inside is simply not safe. Here's one more quick practical note. Even with the engine warmed up to just 60 degrees Celsius, you must not unscrew the expansion tank cap. Even at this temperature, the product is already fully foamed up and will spill out everywhere. By the way, opening the expansion tank, even without any cleaning product inside, when the engine is hot is never a good idea, as you can get seriously burned by the hot steam. Once full operating temperature is reached, you must turn off the engine. Otherwise, it will first get airlocked and then boil over. In some cars, due to the shape of the water pump impellers and the speed at which they spin, there will be so much foam that the temperature sensor won't be able to read the correct value. Because of this, if the temperature stalls while you're warming up the car and refuses to rise any further, do not try to force the engine to heat up. Wait a minute, maybe even two, and shut the car off. It's much safer that way. Once the engine has completely cooled down, I drain all the product into a jerry can. You can see for yourself just how much everything foams, almost like dish soap. And this is exactly where the hardest stage begins, getting rid of all the cleaning agent from our system, which won't be easy at all. Why is this so important? If we don't do this correctly, the chemicals present in the product will remain active during heating and cooling cycles until they eventually eat away at our gaskets, causing the system to lose its seal. On top of that, if too much product is left behind, it will keep foaming, which can cause the engine to get airlocked on its own and overheat locally. And I think we both know what that means. As if that weren't enough, these chemicals are also not harmless to our rubber gaskets and hoses. Long-term contact, even in low concentrations, will lead to the rubber becoming brittle, delaminating, and losing its sealing properties. If your cooling system isn't in perfect condition, it will definitely start leaking after some time if you don't get rid of the flush from the system. That's why, after draining all the fluid, I don't pour new coolant into the expansion tank. Instead, I pour in nothing but distilled water, which we will use to flush out any remaining Liqui Moly. Pouring in the proper coolant at this point would honestly just be a waste of money. We will only use it in a later stage of the work. Before we go any further, please leave a like or a comment. It really helps me make new videos. Thanks! Once it's filled to the top, I unscrew all the bleed screws and top up the fluid to the correct level once more. After that, I close the cap. If you have a newer car, it's possible that the bleeding is done electronically. After bleeding the system, I warm up the car once again while parked without driving for about 10 to 15 minutes so that all the fluid inside can mix together again. Once the engine has completely cooled down, I drain the remaining coolant mixed with the Liqui Moly, distilled water, and all the debris that broke loose during the cleaning process from the cooling system, waiting patiently for everything to drain out. And unfortunately, I have some news here that you might not completely like, because a single flush like this is simply not enough. Even now, after we've drained everything and nothing more is dripping out, there are still about 2 liters of fluid left inside, which still contains the chemicals. That is why you need to perform several of these flushes with distilled water. In my case, I needed as many as 5. During each subsequent top-up, warm-up, and draining process, you will observe that the amount of foam appearing in the system gradually decreases, which is a very good sign. In my case, it wasn't until the 5th time that the entire system was flushed well enough for the contents to stop foaming completely. Right now on the screen, you can see the fluid from the first flush in the big bucket and the distilled water after the final flush in the smaller bowl. And that is a satisfying result. The absolute worst thing you can do is ignore the foam and drive around with a system that isn't completely clean, as this will most likely kill your car within a few thousand, maybe a dozen thousand kilometers. Fortunately, we don't have to test that theory. We can just flush everything properly and only then, at the very end, pour in the correct coolant as recommended by your specific car manufacturer. If you've given a second life to your car's cooling system, now it's time to make sure that whatever flows through it over the coming years is top quality. Therefore, I am now starting to prepare the correct ratio of coolant. The same fluid that was originally in the car is sold as a concentrate and should be mixed in a 1-to-1 ratio with distilled water. The original coolant contains a package of corrosion inhibitors perfectly matched to the metal alloys used to build the BMW engine, which prevents the water channels from being destroyed from the inside. The cheapest fluids from the supermarket can have an aggressive chemical composition that causes premature hardening and cracking of plastic connectors and system gaskets. A high-class fluid effectively protects against cavitation, preventing the formation of air bubbles that destroy the water pump blades. By using a dedicated product, you are guaranteed to maintain the correct boiling point and optimal heat dissipation, which protects the sensitive cylinder head from overheating. In the long run, this is pure savings, because the unique composition of a high-quality product prevents the buildup of deposits and scale that could clog the radiator or the heater core. I pour the ready-mixed coolant into the expansion tank until it reaches the maximum level. And for the very last time, I get rid of the trapped air from the hoses. And after the final bleed of the entire cooling system, you can now safely travel the world and slam the gas pedal down without worrying whether your cooling system can handle it. If you're not sure if this is enough to keep your car in top shape, check out my next video on the 7 most common reasons why cars end up in the scrapyard prematurely. I hope none of them ever happen to you. Good luck and take care.